This episode of Greenhouse Grower to Grower is brought to you by Westbrook Greenhouse Systems, a trusted North American leader in complete greenhouse solutions. From structures and heating to curtains, benches, and full installation, Westbrook delivers systems built to perform and built to last. With a team known for long-term expertise and reliability, you can trust Westbrook with your next greenhouse project, whether it's glass or poly, open roof or freestanding. Learn more at westbrooksystems.com. Connect with them on LinkedIn or visit them at major industry shows across North America.
Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we're shaping the future of floriculture, one conversation at a time. We talk with the growers, leaders, and innovators shaping tomorrow's greenhouse industry today. From market trends, next generation plants, and innovative production, to the challenges and breakthroughs redefining what it means to grow. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. Let's dig into what's next together. Earlier this week, the plant company announced expanded access to its leafjoy houseplants to independent garden centers through an agreement with Eason Horticultural Resources. That announcement was just the latest in a number of steps the plant company is taking to make it easier for consumers to find new varieties in this quickly growing category. In this episode of the Greenhouse Grower to Grower podcast, I talked to Dave Thorne, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at the plant company, about all of this, as well as why quality starts with the breeding process and evolves through investments in high-quality plant production. Here's our conversation. Well, Dave, thanks for joining me today on the podcast. Here to talk about the plant company and some of the things that you guys are working on. Before we get down that road, though, just kind of want to give our audience a little bit of background on who you are, what your role is at the plant company.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. My name is Dave Thorne. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at the plant company, which is a big bucket of everything that we sell rolls over to me. So it's a lot of fun. It's a good place to be. I've been in the industry about 33 years now, believe it or not.
Okay. Very nice. So one of the reasons I wanted to catch up today was, we just saw the news this week about plant company working with Eason Horticulture as a broker partner for leafjoy. And if you want to talk about just kind of how that came about and what that means for them and for you guys as well.
Yeah. No, it's very exciting. Eason is already showing to be a very good partner. Very assertive, very wanting to get to a solution fast, and that's how we operate.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an easy marriage. I can tell you, for us, we've struggled with trying to connect with IGCs all the way, right? I think
Okay.
we've had a company for 5 years now growing exemplary plants, but trying to connect with all these IGCs across the United States is it's no easy task, right?
Yeah.
And and we've tried a number of different ways of doing it. I mean, even with the parent brand of Proven Winners, and which is a brand that obviously growers and retailers trust.
Yeah.
It was still tough for us getting in there. So we've made some very deliberate pivots, and Eason was part of the equation. So
Okay.
we approached them, they approached us. I can't remember which one happened first, and went through some things. And with their reach, with their staff, and with their history, is I think it fits in really well with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, and reaching into that market. I mean, there's such a demand now for house plants, and
Yeah.
consumers are trusting where they go as far as independent garden centers. So being able to make those connections, it's got to be invaluable for you guys, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. And you've probably seen this as much as I have. Garden centers pivot based on the subclass.
Yeah,
And a lot of IGCs had a very small houseplant area before, and a lot of those same IGCs have a very large houseplant area now. So we're we're happy to see that. And there's a lot of crossover too with tropical foliage. That's it's a little. Sometimes it can be on a porch, sometimes it can be in your office. So
yeah,
you've got that gradual customer that's in there too. So I think the IGCs are motivated to capitalize on they want really good quality, right? They've their neck is on the line with their customer base. They're not a box store, right? And I
sure.
worked for box stores for 20 years, love box stores too. But the IGCs, they're part of the environment, right? They're part of their community, and they own that. So I think that whatever they're selling is representative of who they are.
Oh yeah. Well, and let's dig into that houseplant category for a second. So, I mean, obviously we've seen rapid growth on that, especially in the past few years coming out of the pandemic. So, what are you guys seeing in that area? What are some of the big trends that you're kind of keeping tabs on as that segment continues to grow?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to the owners about that too just the other day because we try and look and see what's happening and try and be ahead of the curve or try and set the
Yeah.
curve, right? It'd be great to be the trailblazer. And what we've noticed is that probably two big things. People are still chasing down cool varieties, right? People are
Hmm.
still talking a lot about and looking for things that are unique and exciting. So
Sure.
that has I hear different things where people are like, they're going back to commodities and tried and true. I still think there's an audience for that for sure. But I will tell you based on, our sales, our demand, our any social platform, Brian, you can imagine,
Yeah.
is just lit up with people talking about the cool, fun stuff that they found. So that's a huge bucket, right? So you still have that one. Um, Additionally, we've seen this resurgence of people going back to things that are very strong in the market, but they want a good quality, right? No
Sure.
one wants a commodity grown epiprenum, right? They want something that's been grown out and it's going to be value based too. Economical challenges are always around, no matter what's going on in the world. So you always want to make sure
Yeah.
you've got a good value, something good for your dollar, right? And we're trying to provide that.
So, as you look at variety development in this category, and the fact that there's the Proven Winners Plant Company connection. So,
Yeah.
how does that work in terms of you guys hear from customers that you talk to about what they're looking for on these new varieties? How does that then get back through the chain to the team of breeders at Proven Winners and
Yeah.
and what they can do to kind of address some of those that need for new varieties that have different qualities that consumers are looking for?
Yeah, it's interesting. Great question. The pipeline, right, of what
Yeah.
you have and what you're going to bring in has to be deliberate, can't be accidental, right? So I think the folks that are going out there asking for things, whether it be taking customer feedback or things that they think, that someone could use better, or, sizing, shape, compact knot. I mean, all that stuff. All that's got to get back into into the breeders and the folks that are making this stuff happen. Now,
Yeah.
um, our R&D team, love them to death. I could brag on them all day long here. Um, I mean, it is mad scientist lab when you go in there. These guys and girls are just amazing over there.
Yeah.
But our owners are involved in this too, and I
Okay.
think both of those guys, for the history that they've been in, they travel to Asia 3, 4 times a year. We're going to Europe quite a bit, so and that's just for the breeders that we have in the pipeline that we have and the connections that we've worked to
Yeah.
build on top of what Proven Winners is doing for us too, right? So obviously there's a connection in that piece there too, where they've got their breeding pipeline.
Mhm.
And then take all that aside, there's I think when you get to a place where people know that you're doing cool stuff, they want to bring things to you. And
Sure.
we have people coming to us now too, which is really amazing. So it's kind of a threefold thing, right? Between the brand, between what we're doing, which is very aggressive.
Yeah.
Listen, I will tell you, I think we bought in God, I don't even know the number. I'm gonna say it's like 1,000 different varieties last year, and of course, we
Mhm.
gotta vet all those down to like, okay, we're gonna keep 20. But th that goes to show you that we're dedicated trying to, like, bring in, I mean, a lot, and then sometimes we go back to to something that we vetted and said, "Hey, we didn't like it," and then, a
Yeah.
year later, we're like, "Oh, maybe that did make sense." So we have this kind of secondary and tertiary kind of scenario where we go back and start to look at, things that we can, put into the environment, especially as some consumer demand changes. And then obviously you got to be able to grow the plant, get the stock ready. That's a whole nother conversation, Brian.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, like, so you have the end product. It's this new house plan that you're trying to get into consumers' hands, but there's so many things that lead up to that point. And to your
Yeah.
point, it's everything from testing new things, trying out what works and what might not work. And to your point too about the owners of plant company, getting everybody involved and on the same page to make sure that we all have the same goal in mind. Here's how we want to get there in terms of this development.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I can also tell you the consumer feedback means a lot. So if there's any growers out there or consumers or anyone else that want to chime in, please do that because we love to hear what's going on out there. And I think it's very important to listen, but it's also very important to act on that. And we found that between our process, between what we continue to review, I mean it's a sweet spot for us. It really
Yeah.
is, and it's not just hey we're trying to do it on on the cheap. And that's not a shot against anyone out there. I mean, these
Right.
are we all run a business, right? And you've got to make sure the financials work out. But there's this core philosophy of the company of just really delivering exemplary plants and things that are unique, and and being kind of on the forefront of that in the industry is really important to us. So I think that shows in the selection and the breeding and
Yeah.
quality of what you're going to get.
So that process then of trying to hear what consumers are asking for and what they're looking for, how does that work for you guys? How do you communicate on the retail side? And then when you flip that around, so if consumers are looking for education, what do you guys
Yeah.
do in that regard as well?
Yeah, I think we've got some more work to do on the education piece. We've got, of course, there's websites and there's videos and things like that that happen. We've been trying to connect with people that have connected really well in the industry. For instance, there's some of these plant conventions out there. PlantCon's a big one. They've been a great
Yeah.
partner of ours. And trying to get into, talk to an audience that's interested and also explain what's going on and trying to educate on there.
Yeah.
That I can definitely tell you probably the biggest vehicle right now is some of the conventions and then some of the social channels of making sure that content is getting out there. And
Sure.
and for what it's worth too, we've taken the approach of small bites, right? You don't want to have this 30-minute video that no one's going to watch. I mean, heck, I'm like 30 seconds, right? If you give me something that's longer than 30 seconds, I don't know if I'm gonna, So we're trying to give interesting tidbits. And if someone wants to learn more, then you kind of click and go learn more. So that repository of goods that we're talking about, we go back and talk about the things that people are asking about a little bit more.
Yeah.
Typical things, right? Houseplants. Everyone wants to know about watering and light, right? That's always the
Mm,
two biggest thing. How much do I water? Did I killed this houseplant? I watered it too much, right? So we try and address things like that. And then the lighting is always a challenge, right?
yeah.
How much light, what is indirect bright light, Brian? What does that really mean, right? So, trying to make sure someone understands when they're evaluating their space, because we want to be successful with what they're doing too. So that education's got to get out there. And we talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, just at that same time, doing that through the mode of how consumers are shopping for plants. I mean, you have somebody coming into a garden center to look for something. They may or may not know what they're looking for when they get in there, but you hear more about so many people just doing their research online and
Yeah.
looking things up before they even get to that point. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of affect how you guys are doing things.
Yeah, totally, totally. And believe it or not, there's a resurgence of the QR code, right? You
Yeah.
have a nice code with a quick little video on it. Someone can snap it, and as they're sitting inside of an IGC or a box store, and they can get some research done right then. So if we can make that easier for them to have that research done, obviously that's just a win right there. If
Oh
you have to
yeah.
sit there and hunt, for 5 minutes for something, you might get distracted and leave.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, let's talk specifically about leafjoy for a second. So what makes that a unique program in the marketplace?
Yeah, everyone thinks that they've got the best genetics, and listen, I can go on this parade and tell you we've got the best genetics. I
Mm,
think we've got the best genetics. It's like when you have your secret chili sauce, but I can tell you there's a couple things in there. Again, the forethought on bringing new things to market is one thing unique. The other piece, which is probably one of the biggest pieces, is really a fully grown out plant, way more than the spec. We want to make sure that it's clean, it's disease free.
sure.
There's a lot of background work that's went into this, been very deliberate. One of our owners is from the Netherlands, and he grew up with these just, I mean, outstanding, produce super tall greenhouses, things that are
Yeah.
very technical, right? And I think a lot of that has been put into how we grow things and the things that we're doing. So, for instance, we've got, this expansion on our building that we launched last year. We've got a rooting chamber in there, and the rooting chamber is a massive game changer for us because
Okay.
we can get things ready, we can get them clean, all right. We can obviously accelerate the growing process too. So it makes the plant ready for speed to market, but it also makes sure that we're delivering a really good quality program. So I don't know if I'm answering the question. Hopefully I
Yeah.
am. I started hearing my brain like dance over here a little bit. And I'm like, I got to talk about that. But it's really important because that's what you get when you get a leaf joy plant, right? You're going to get something that is an amazing variety grown to an amazing level and quality. And quite honestly, you should not have to, as long as you take care of it, I mean, it should last for a long time, right? And that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
do.
So that rooting chamber that you talked about, so that kind of leads into the other thing I want to talk about during the conversation here was You alluded a few minutes earlier in the conversation to, making sure that you're, investing in your facility the right way to be able to
Yeah.
produce high quality plants. Now, I know
Mhm.
we did a cover story on you guys last year, right about this time, on some of the expansion and the new technology that was taking place at the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about, how that's come along, how that's progressed, and anything new that you guys are starting to look at?
Yeah, yeah. There's, that expansion, I mean, more than doubled our size, which is
Hmm.
great. So, obviously you get a chance to plant some more plants and turn some more goods.
Yeah.
The rooting chamber was a part of that too. The other piece that's over there is it's been able to give us flexibility on getting things ready quicker, getting things. We use some contract growers. I mean, everyone does, right? We're super selective with that, but we can get goods ready for them in
Yeah.
that area quicker as well. E-commerce has blown up for a lot of the world. I think a lot of people shop on their phone or on the internet from time to
Yeah.
time. We put a massive e-commerce line in over there too, so that expansion really has worked out really well for us to be able
Okay.
to breathe a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because it was even though the facility's pretty big, it's way bigger now.
Sure, sure. That approach that you have, so I know that, there's things to go in the facility. There's also, and you mentioned e-commerce there for a second, there's the
Yeah,
internal processes, the internal data that goes along with that. Is that something that you
yeah.
guys have taken a hard look at?
Yeah, yeah. There's, are you talking about like an R&D on plants, or are you talking
Yeah, it's
about?
R&D on plants, but then also, with e-commerce comes inventory management and things like
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We just launched a new ERP, so that's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun. And anyone in the industry that's launched a new ERP, it's always a challenge. It's always fun. But yeah, getting the data set right and being able to make good decisions is really important. And we've invested with a couple different partners, not only with the ERP but also with the inventory management piece,
Sure.
just to be able to cover that because there is moving parts, right? And there's timing and things that go along with that as well. And
Yeah.
it's been, yeah, that's been a big part of it, though. It's a good question.
There was a great panel discussion at this year's Cultivate with a couple of folks from companies in that segment of the industry. They're talking about what you need to
Yeah,
know when you're looking at an ERP system, and what makes the most sense for you. I don't know if you were at Cultivate
mhm,
this year, but
yeah,
speaking of Cultivate, were there, and this kind of stepping away from the main part of the
sure.
conversation here, but were there any insights or new things that you learned in going to Cultivate this year?
I think we're finally starting to stabilize post-COVID. So, I
Yeah.
think there's this, it's 2026, which is still mind-blowing, but yeah, I think talking to growers, talking to retailers, talking to partners, being able to actually finally have a baseline on when we can forecast a little bit more predictable. That
Yeah.
has been a big thing. And I know that ties a little bit back into the finance part of the business, but I mean, really, no one wants to grow a bunch of plants on spec. You want to make sure you grow a really good product and you turn that product quickly.
Yeah.
And I heard that from a lot of partners that they're like, man, I think the hangover's finally over. I think we're just we're in this like 25, 26, hopefully 27 predictability versus this roller coaster of, we don't know where the industry is going to go. So I think that
Yeah.
was, I heard that from a lot of folks. And the other thing I'll tell you is traffic was up, at least in our section of the of the trade show. I know it's like hit or miss sometimes, but it did seem like there was a lot more activity than even last year. So
I
good
think we
job,
heard a lot of
Cultivate.
the same things. Yeah. Well, and to your point there about that predictive forecasting, I mean, that is so critical today now than ever before. I mean, and once you think you're in a good spot, and then all of a sudden, you get other things thrown your way that make that a little bit of
Mhm.
a challenge. So to be able to have any tool at your disposal to make that more efficient
Yeah.
has got to be valuable for a company like you guys.
Yeah, 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 totally, totally. That data is, it's decision making for us, right? So
Yeah, for
100%.
sure, sure.
Mhm.
So last question is, you look ahead, taking a step back from everything we talked about so far, what excites you the most about the future of this segment of the industry that you're in? What are you most looking forward to?
Wow, wow. This is going to sound very I don't want to sound all sentimental, but our I see this evolving and still emerging customer base that I'm very excited to be a part of, right? I've worked in a lot of different subsets of this of the horticulture and even some agriculture too in my time. And to see consumers to be so excited about what they're doing and talking about it, house plants are community for a lot of folks, right? This is, there's everything from plant bingo going on at breweries I live in Orlando, and that's something that they do down there, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But of course, you get the social piece of people showing off, and but it's not even like so much showing off, but they're talking with each other, and this has created this. Listen, we're a society that is quite digital on our communities. It's not just your neighbors anymore, right? You got friends all over the place, and I see this, and the common denominator is the plant, right? So again, what we're seeing and what we're getting excited about is the fact that that doesn't look to be going away anytime soon. And I've got my kids are grown up, but I see the younger millennials and the Gen Zs too already going into this, and they're it's coffee shops, it's books, and it's plants, and you just see these personalities kind of evolving too, and it's very exciting to be a part of because we're delivering something that they need and that they want for their lifestyle. So I think that's probably one of the bigger things that I kind of get stoked about. And you can tell I'll get a little silly over here because there's so much going on in there to talk about, and for us to be involved with.
Thank you for joining us. You can learn more about this and other topics at greenhousegrower.com, and you can also follow Greenhouse Grower on LinkedIn. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. And please leave us a rating or review as it helps other listeners find the show. The Greenhouse Grower to Grower podcast is produced by the team at Meister Media Worldwide. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower.